Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV. I'm your host for tonight, Mohammed Chinara. And tonight we have Moulana on the other side of the desk. So Moulana will be in the hot seat and he'll be answering the questions. Moulana, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Muhammad, and to the viewers.
Moulana, as we come towards the end of the year, we're cutting down on the heavy stuff, the current affairs and all of that. So we're going to discuss some more social issues going in towards the new year. Tonight we're discussing an important topic, the importance of intention. And I think most of our kids know, most of us know, we have kids. The first hadith in the hadith kitabs is innamal a'malu binniyat. Actions are judged by intention. Why are we discussing and what's the importance of this topic?
Well, niyyah, as we refer to it in Arabic, or intention, as you say in English, is what creates your reality, both in this world as well as in the akhirah. Because in the end of the day, it's not what you did or how much you did, it's the intention with what you did it. So how you will be judged on the day of Qiyamah will be based not on the quantity of your actions, not how much you did or what you did, but the quality of the intentions behind it. If you look at the verse of the Quran Kareem, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ. Allah is the one who created life and death. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. To test you, to see who from amongst you will do the best of deeds, not the most of deeds. So that's why I started off by saying that intention creates your reality. In this world, benefit is proportionate to intention. And in the akhirah, reward is proportionate to intention. So it's not what you did or how much you did, it's the intention with which you did it. Someone could do a lot, but with a contaminated intention. And someone else can do a little, but with a totally pure intention. I can give 1,000,000 rands in charity, you can give 100 rands in charity. But the value of your 100 rands can exceed my 1,000,000 rand if your intention is stronger, if your intention is purer. And therefore, intention is fundamental, intention is foundational, intention is who we are. Living beings do similar things. But in the end of the day, what differentiates what you're doing from what the next person is doing is your intention. And that's why, as much as we sometimes think that intention is a very basic topic, you stand up in the masjid and you talk about intention, people will think that, okay, he's going to conclude now by asking us to go out 3 days in the path of Allah. It's seen as a very spiritual and a very basic topic. I mean, if an alim talks about intention in the Jummah talk, and you go home and your wife or your kids ask you, what did the alim speak about today? And you say intention, they'll probably say, oh, okay, nice. It's not one of those catchy topics, one of those, as people would say, contemporary topics. It's not one of those topics that, raises eyebrows, that just the mere mention of the topic, if you put it on a poster, it generates interest and it captivates attention. However, the interesting thing is this, that as much as we as Muslims ought to know about the importance of intention, and we'll get to that in a bit, today, the so-called lifestyle coaches and influencers and people who write books on how to improve yourself and how to live a better life, they are all talking about the power of intentionality or the power of intention. So whilst they may not look so much into it from a spiritual or religious perspective, but even from a material perspective, they have come to understand that intention is what motivates you. Intention is what gives you direction. Intention is what gives you a sense of purpose. So this topic of intention is fundamental for us as Muslims. But at the same time, it's as contemporary as you can get, because there are many people who are just floating in life. There are many people who have the talent, who are putting in a lot of effort, but who are directionless, who are purposeless. They're feeling very shallow, very empty, because they don't have a sense of grounding, a sense of why they're doing things. What are they trying to achieve via what they are doing? You hear stories all the time of people who have become millionaires, but they still don't have a sense of purpose. Okay, so what am I doing here? I've earned all this money, but I'm going to take nothing with me. So what's the purpose of all of this? I'm still going to die. What am I making an effort for? I can die tomorrow. I can be stricken by cancer. I can be knocked by a car. I can be shot by a hijacker, and that's the end of it. So niyyah, we may perceive it wrongly as something very basic, very simple. Okay, it's important. We know it's important. But in reality, it is as important a topic as you can get. It is as contemporary a topic that you can get.
You're speaking about people having a purpose. Just last night or a few nights ago, I was listening to the Springbok rugby coach speaking, and he said 2 years ago when he took over, He got them all into a room and he asked them, what is your intention and why do you want to play for the Springbok team? And that was the basis and the foundation they set out, hoping to win the World Cup. And we know what happened, and you can see the euphoria that's happening. But as you mentioned, the importance of just having the ground rules set, and that's basically the intention they made.
You see, that's a very good example, because someone could ask that how can you ask a question like that of someone who's playing rugby as a career? Because these rugby players, right, they've chosen from a very early stage in life to pursue rugby as a career. Many of them, they sideline their studies, they do a lot of things differently. So one would assume that, hey, you're playing rugby for the Springboks. Surely you know why you're playing rugby. Surely you know what you're doing it for. The same assumption could be made for us as Muslims. That, oh, of course you know why you're alive. Of course you know why you're doing what you're doing. But intention is such a thing, it requires renewal all the time. It requires you to renew your intention, to remind yourself, so it gives you a fresh sense of purpose. And I think that is what Rassi Erasmus was trying to do. It's not that they didn't know the answer to the question. He was trying to remind them why they embarked on this journey in the first place, so that they can have a renewed sense of purpose and motivation.
Moulana, as I mentioned in the introduction, we all know that hadith, innamal a'malu binniyat, actions are judged by intentions. Now you need to explain to us, because most of us as parents, we've heard it parrot fashion to our kids over the last maybe 5-6 years. What is the importance of intention from the hadith?
Look, this is perhaps the most famous statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't think you'll find a Muslim who has not heard this hadith. Many of the muhaddithin, they start their compilation of ahadith with this hadith. Sahih Bukhari starts with innamal a'malu binniyat. Sahih Muslim starts, Mishkatul Masabih, many, Riyadh al-Salihin. They all start with this hadith. So that in itself should tell you that if this is the most narrated statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there has to be, some really serious significance to the importance of intention. Imam Shafi'i, the great jurist, used to say that this hadith is 1/3 of knowledge, because a person's actions emanate from one of three places: either your heart, or your tongue, or your limbs. Right? It's either what you're thinking and intending, or what you're saying, or what you're doing. And intention has got to do with the heart. So that's why it's 1/3 of knowledge. Imam Shafi'i used to say, and Imam Abu Dawood used to say, that half of fiqh and jurisprudence is intention. Many of the rulings that the muftis make is that they look at what was the intention of the person. Some people have said this is 1/3 of Islam. In hadith terminology, without becoming very technical, they refer to this hadith as falling into the category of tawatur. A tawatur is that hadith which is so widespread in being reported. It's so excessively narrated that its authenticity is beyond any doubt whatsoever, because it's so commonly reported from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as you say, we have all heard this hadith, and the point is not to remind people of this hadith in terms of its words. Rather, the purpose of this discussion is to look at the deeper meaning, the implications, and then to open up this door of realization in terms of how we can tap into the power of intention. You see, when we talk about intention, Mohammed, many times we only look at it, okay, maybe the Moulana is talking about intention now because he wants to emphasize that, we must do things only for the pleasure of Allah, and there mustn't be any weakness, there mustn't be any showing off or any ostentation. Of course, that's fundamental to the whole aspect of intention. But there's another very dynamic aspect of intention, and that is the power. And when you talk about intention, when you talk about innamal a'malu binniyat, it's about tapping into the power of intention. I mentioned to you earlier on that today, the Robin Sharmas and the Stephen Coveys and others are talking about the power of intention or the power of intentionality. And when you look at the books on, the 7 rules of success and the 7 rules of this or that rules of the, whatever they talk in terms of success, prosperity, improving yourself, improving your performance in whatever you do, intention comes in there some way or the other, in that scale or in that list of what you need to do. Whereas 1441 years ago, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it in that one simple yet so dynamic, so profound, so comprehensive statement, innamal a'malu binniyat, that your actions are based upon their intentions, meaning the reward of your actions, the benefit of your actions, the motivation behind your actions, the sustainability of your actions is all proportionate to the quality and to the nature of your intention. So we know the hadith, but it's about internalizing the deeper meaning of the hadith and taking that hadith and letting that hadith guide our thoughts, guide our intentions, and ultimately guide our actions.
Well, I think we're going to take our first break now. When we come back, I think we can go more into this hadith and also the power of intention. We're going to take a short break now. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV. And this evening we're discussing the topic of intention. Moulana, before the break we spoke about the importance of the topic, why we're discussing it. And as we ended the first segment, we discussed the famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this segment, I'd like to discuss more the power of intention based on that hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Look, in order for us to understand the power of intention, we need to understand how niyyah applies to the life of a Muslim. Now, in Islam, our actions fall into one of three categories. Right? The first category is what we call the fara'id, those actions which are compulsory. So, a good example of that will be salah. Now, when you want to perform salah, you have to make intention that I am performing 3 rakats salatul maghrib. So intention in relation to the compulsory actions, to the fara'id, is very clear-cut, very straightforward, very easy for us to understand. I am going to perform hajj, I have to make intention. I'm going to keep fast, I have to make intention. And intention is necessary, whether you verbalize it or whether it is in your heart. So that's easy. The second category is what we call the muharramat, those things which are forbidden, right? Now their intention is immaterial. You can't do something wrong and justify it by saying my intention was good. There's no concept of Robin Hood in Islam. That, okay, I stole, I know it's wrong, but my intention was to steal from the rich and give to the poor. So my intention justifies the wrong act that I did. In Islam, if something is wrong, it's wrong. If it's haram, it's haram. A good intention cannot legitimize a wrong action. So intention is neither here nor there when it comes to the wrong action. Of course, it could act as a mitigating factor. Yeah. One is a person stole because of greed, another is a person stole to help someone. In the eyes of Allah, perhaps Allah will be more lenient on the person whose intention was somewhat better. But in terms of Sharia, a wrong is wrong, right? So that's also easy to understand. The third category is where we can now explore this aspect of the power of intention, and that is your normal routine, day-to-day activities and mundane actions. Eating, sleeping, drinking, socializing. And the example I normally give is that, okay, you're sitting down to have supper. Your non-Muslim neighbor is sitting down to have supper at the same time. And then the non-Muslim's neighbor is also having supper. What's the difference between your supper, the non-Muslim neighbor's supper, and the non-Muslim neighbor's dog's supper? Everyone's eating, consuming, deriving nourishment, and then ejecting from the body at a later stage. The difference would be in the intention. If you're eating with the intention that this is food which Allah has blessed me with, this is halal food which I'm consuming. I'm consuming this food because Allah has made it obligatory upon me to nourish my body. I'm consuming this food so that I can gain the strength, I can perform my salah, I can keep my fast. I'm consuming this food so that I can carry out my duties, I can go out, I can earn a livelihood. All of those kind of things that you make intentions for. Then every second that you spend eating, that you spend burping, that you spend digesting the food, even though you're enjoying the process, that you spend having the food ejected from your body, every second of that process is considered ibadah and you're getting reward for it. So that's where there is the power of intention. You ate a burger, your non-Muslim neighbor ate a burger, and he took a piece of the burger and he threw it for the dog. The difference between the eating of the three is in the intention. You did it for the pleasure of Allah. You did it because you understood that Allah wants you to eat in a specific ways for specific reasons. So just that intention which is in your heart, just reading that Bismillah and saying Alhamdulillah after you have eaten. You see, these masnoon du'as that we have been taught from the time we were small are very effective in helping us renew our intention all the time. When I go to the bathroom, where am I going? When I put my clothes, why am I wearing it? When I'm drinking water, why am I drinking? When I'm eating, why am I eating? So that's the power of intention. So you extend that then to every mundane action which is carried out by humans across the religious divide, actually which is carried out by all living beings. So we all sleep. What's the difference between you sleeping, your neighbor sleeping, and your neighbor's cat sleeping? The difference is if you sleep taking the name of Allah, with the intention that I'm sleeping because I need to rest my body, I need to rest my mind, I need to sleep so I can be fresh for Salatul Fajr, I need to sleep so I can go to work tomorrow, I need to sleep so that I can fulfill my obligations that Allah has made compulsory upon me, then every second that you spend sleeping, even if you're snoring like a John Deere tractor, it's considered to be ibadah and worship, and you're getting reward for it. Now, they tell us on average you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. The average lifespan of an ummati is 65 years. So 20 odd years you spend sleeping. If your intention is right at the time of sleep, you've got 20 years of guaranteed ibadah. That's the power of intention. And the non-Muslim is also sleeping, the cat is sleeping, the dog is sleeping, the snake is sleeping, the spider is sleeping, every living creature is sleeping. But your sleeping becomes differentiated and distinguished because of intention. And that's the power of intention. So, what percentage of our lives is spent in eating, sleeping, drinking, socializing, doing the mundane activities, which every other human does, which many living beings do? The major portion of your life is spent in doing that. And if your intention is correct, then you've already guaranteed that the major portion of your life is spent in the ibadah and worship of Allah. Even if you're a 5 times namazi, as we say, you perform your 5 obligatory salah, you keep your 30 fasts in Ramadan, you perform your hajj once in a lifetime, you discharge your zakat. What percentage of a 65-year lifespan does all of that take? How long does it take you to discharge your zakat annually? It's 30 fast out of 365 days. It's 1 hajj journey in 65 years, which is compulsory upon you. It's 5 namazes of say 10 minutes each in a 24-hour cycle. How much of Quran do you read, even those who are regular? How much of dhikr do you make? All of that takes up the minor portion of your daily routine. The major portion goes into mundane activities, and that's where the power of intention lies. That if you can get your intention right, not only in those actions which are compulsory, that I'm doing this salah, zakah, hajj and som for Allah, or not only for, abstention is also an intention, right? So I'm not having alcohol because Allah doesn't want me to have it. I'm not looking because I'm not supposed to look. That's also reward. Those are the 2 easy to understand categories, compulsory and forbidden acts. But it is in the mundane activities where we become negligent, and it's in the mundane activities where we can tap into the power of intention.
It's really important what you said, but you mentioned something, how do you get your intention right? That's something that people always ask, they want to know, how do I fix my intention? I might be doing something, I'll be doing, as you said, a mundane action, but how do I get my intention right in doing that action?
One day a Sahabi came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, Ya Rasulullah, he asked him a very fundamental question. He said, Mal Iman? What is Iman? What is faith? Imagine today if you go to a Moulana, to a Sheikh, and to a scholar, and you say, what is faith? He'll look at you, he'll smile, and then he'll say, how many hours do you have? He maybe want to give you an entire book to read for you to grasp and for you to understand what is faith. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave a 1-word answer. 1 word. And normally you and I, if we give a 1-word answer, either we're trying to be sarcastic, or we don't know, that's why we're sufficing with 1 word, or we're just in a hurry and we're not interested. But the Nabi of Allah gave 1-word answer. He said, what is Iman? Al-Ikhlas, sincerity. Because faith means you believe in Allah. How do you prove that you believe in Allah? By doing whatever you do for the pleasure of Allah. Lillah. Totally, wholly, only, solely and exclusively for the pleasure of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Now if you can do that, then that is faith. When you're performing salah, you're doing for the pleasure of Allah. When you're discharging zakah, you're doing for the pleasure of Allah. When you're not doing something, you're doing for the pleasure of Allah. When you're eating, you're sleeping, you're drinking, you're speaking, you're socializing, you're not speaking, you're not interacting. Every minute and every second of your existence is whatever you're doing at that time for the pleasure of Allah. That's the essence of faith. And that's why you need to constantly remind yourself that as a Muslim, I need to constantly check my intention. That's why the scholars write, a good way of regulating your intention is you check your intention before the deed. Then why am I doing this? Like you said, you may know why you're doing it, but you need to ask yourself the question so that you renew your intention, you improve your intention. Then during the action, why am I doing this? But most importantly, after the action. And many people don't understand this, that why must I check my intention after the action? Let's take a very basic example, right? Let's say you're donating the land for a masjid. So before you donate, you make the intention, you say, no, I'm doing it for the pleasure of Allah. I'm doing it because I want to do it in the name of my parents who have passed on, whatever, fine. Your intention is sincere. At the time when you're going and handing over the land to the trustees of the masjid, you say, I'm doing this, here's everything, it's all for the pleasure of Allah. Now what happens? The news starts to spread that Muhammad Chunara gave the land for the masjid. So you started off sincere, in the middle you were sincere. Now you start getting acknowledgement, people start praising you, the whispers start to gain traction. Now it's echoing in the community, in the society, that he's the man who donated the land. Couple of months, couple of years down the line, you start making a noise. Why am I not consulted? Don't you know I gave the land? You see, ostentation is like a spiritual cancer. It lurks and you don't realize it's there. It's eating away at the purity of your intention and you don't realize it. Allah does not promise you reward upon completion of a good action. No. The Quran says, Man ja'a bil hasana, that whoever comes with a good deed intact on the day of Qiyamah, then you'll get the reward multiplied minimum by 10 and beyond that depending on the purity of your intention. So it's like money in many ways. Earning the money is not the achievement. Securing the money and then being able to utilize it for whatever you need to utilize it, that is the achievement. You can make R1 million today, but if you're robbed of it tomorrow, it's like you never made it in the first place. So what robs you of your good deeds is contamination of intention post the action. That's where you need to be very careful. After you've done it, preserve your sincerity. Keep yourself sincere. Rebuke yourself if other thoughts come. It's hard to detect, it's hard to dispel, but you need to constantly check. You need to constantly check because that's fundamental to whether you'll get reward or not. إِنَّمَا يُبْعَثُ النَّاسُ عَلَى نِيَّتِهِمْ. Allah will resurrect you as per your intentions, not your actions. It goes back to what I said right at the beginning. You will not be judged by what you did or how much you did, but the quality of the intentions with which you did it. There's this verse of Surah Kahf, which sends shivers down the back, where Allah says, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Should I not tell you about who is the greatest loser? The greatest loser. The greatest loser is not that person who did nothing, because the person who did nothing will expect nothing. The greatest loser is that person, الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. Those who did a lot, and they had great expectations that they were going to get the reward of having done a lot, only for them to come to the year after and realize that because of one or two things, either they did a lot but their aqeedah and belief was not right. They did not believe in Allah as they ought to believe in Him, or their intention was not right. So there was either the greater shirk, which is shirk in terms of your belief, or the lesser shirk, which is association of partners with Allah in your intention. Either one of those two will result in all of your good deeds coming to naught. That's the greatest loser, as per the definition of the Quran, because you did a lot expecting now to come into the Akhirah and see the fruits of your many years of toil and sacrifice and efforts, only to see all of it coming to naught. So it's like, in simple terms, a loser is not that man who put nothing in the bank, because he knows he put nothing. The loser is that man who put millions, but then he wasn't careful over his password, and then when he went to see, he had a zero balance. That's the great loser, because he made all the effort and he did all the deposits, but he never preserved it. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Sahaba that the greatest fear that I have for you is shirk. And Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, will we go back to associating partners with Allah when we've just come out of shirk? The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm not referring to that shirk where you will prostrate before idols. I'm referring not to association of partners with Allah in worship, but associating partners with Allah in intention. One is you're supposed to worship Allah alone. And we do that because we're Muslims, we're monotheistic, right? But the other is you ought to do it for the pleasure of Allah alone. And that's where we are weak. Because on the day of Qiyamah it will be announced that those who did any good for the pleasure of Allah and simultaneously to please someone else or to gain some acknowledgement or some benefit, like Allah does not tolerate association in worship, Allah does not tolerate any partnership in intention. There's no reward for you. Go to those people who you're seeking to impress. Now that is not a person who did it only to impress people. It's a person who did it, I want reward from Allah, but I also want people to speak positively about me. That partnership in the intention nullifies the purity of the intention, the sincerity. And that's where the problem lies. That ostentation eats away, it corrodes, the good deeds. Now, coming back to what you were saying, how do you correct your intention? How do you know, firstly, whether you're sincere or not? I mean, sincerity is a matter of the heart. You can't gauge. You ask me, is your kurta clean or not? I can have a look and see, right, no marks, it's clean. Maybe the back, I can ask somebody to have a look and they'll say, no, there's no marks, fine. But how do you check your heart? You can't check it, nor can anyone else check it. So there are indicators. And the one indicator that the scholars give, they say, if you are lazy in private but active in public, then it's time to check your sincerity. So if a person is performing 2 rakat salah in the masjid, this is something that it's like a kind of a bee in the bonnet for me. Many times, it's now Jummah. It's time to give the talk. And the baji who's sitting right in front of the mimbar or the mic reads the longest 2 rakats that you'd ever see. And he can see that people are waiting, and the alim is there and he needs to start the talk. No, and he's totally focused on all the humility and khushu and khudu. Sometimes the imam will stand up after Isha Salah and say, brothers, after the remaining sunnats, there's going to be a talk. And the one sitting right in front of the mic will read the longest sunnats. And the whole congregation is finished and waiting, and he is still making nice at-tahiyyat, 21 mids, and making salam so slowly that I think, people. Now, one is then, and that is totally inconsiderate. If you want to read long sunnats and there's a talk that's about to take place, go to the side. There's no added reward for you reading it there. The reward for the first surf is for the farad salah in the congregation. But beyond that, if that same person goes home and he has to perform 2 rakat salah, then it's up, down, kiss the ground and back to town, then that's a problem of sincerity. Lazy in private, active in public. Another indicator that you need to check your intention is that if people praise you, then you continue. If people criticize you, you stop. If you continue with praise and if you stop with criticism, that means you're not really doing it for Allah. You're doing it because you want the praise. When the praise comes, it motivates you. When the praise doesn't come, it demotivates you. When criticism comes, you stop it altogether because your objective was praise, not criticism. Now, if you feel you didn't achieve your objective, you pull back. One example that I love in terms of how do you know if you're sincere, or what is sincerity, one scholar so beautifully said, when you hide your good deeds, as passionately as you hide your evil deeds, then you are sincere. When we do something wrong, you don't want your wife to know, you don't want your parents to know, you don't want your children to know, you don't want no one to know. You're very guarded over the wrong that you've done. When you are as guarded over the good that you did, you don't want no one to know, then that's a sign of sincerity. And in Arabic, they say, الناس كلهم هالكون إلا العالمون. Everyone is destroyed except those who have knowledge. والعالمون كلهم هالكون إلا العاملون. And all those who have knowledge are destroyed except those who practice on their knowledge. والعاملون كلهم هالكون إلا المخلصون. And even those who practice on their knowledge, all of them are destroyed except those who have sincerity. والمخلصون على خطر عظيم. And even those who have sincerity are vulnerable. So your knowledge and your action has no value until and unless it's powered by sincere intention. There is this story that during the time of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, they had defeated a king. And after they had defeated this king and his army, they were gathering the booty, the spoils of war. And one man whom nobody knew walked in carrying the crown of the king that was defeated. And that crown was so valuable that they say had he kept it, the jewels that were embedded in the crown would have been generated so much of money that it would have been adequate for a few generations of his. So he was very sincere and honest that he brought the crown. Nobody knew him, nobody knew he had it, but he came and he brought it because it did not belong to him, it belonged to the public treasury. So naturally, as he walked in, he's carrying the crown and everyone's looking and everyone's silent and everyone's taken aback, and he comes and he puts the crown and he starts walking out. And Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu tells him that, listen, what's your name? So he turns around and he smiles and he says, that Allah for whose pleasure I brought the crown, He knows my name, that's sufficient for me. That's sincerity. I mean, at that time, if it was me, I'd probably say, oh, you don't know my name. I'm Sulaiman, son of Muhammad, who was the son of Musa, who was the son of Sulaiman, who was the son of Muhammad, who was the son of Ahmad. My surname is Ravat. I come from this village. My father's family comes from this village. My mother. You'd want people to know exactly who you are. Because that's a moment of acknowledgement, it's a moment of praise, it's a moment of, recognition. But his intention was solid, that I did this for the pleasure of Allah, I don't want to compromise in any way. Until today you find these people. I know people, I'm involved with the masjid, they'll come and give you. And if you just have to whisper to someone that, money came from that, they get very angry. Why did you take my name? I don't want anyone to know what I did. So that's how you check your intention, and you need to guard against ostentation. However, I must mention one thing, just to round off this point, that now we mustn't become despondent. Many of us may think, whoa, I'm falling very short. I might as well just give up here because I don't have that sincerity. Of course, sincerity is what we need to strive for. But even if you don't have it, continue the good deeds, because it becomes a habit after a while, and the sincerity will eventually come in. There will be some barakah. Faqih Abul Layth Samarkandi gives a very good example. He says, somebody told him that I built, in those days they used to build what they call a musafir khana. There was no bed and breakfast in those days. So people would build a small little place on the road so that the travelers could come there and they could, just freshen up for the night and that kind of thing. So The person came and he confided to the scholar. He said, look, I put up this building, but I wasn't sincere. I wanted people to praise me. So what should I do? He said, okay, you missed out on the ultimate, which was sincerity to get the reward. You'll get no reward because you were not sincere. However, it was still not an exercise in futility because the people who use it will make dua for you. They'll make dua for you because you have done something which is of benefit to people. So don't let the devil ever beguile you into stopping something because your intention is not what it's supposed to be. Of course, sincerity is pivotal. We want the maximum that we can get. So work on your sincerity, but don't stop even if you're insincere. Because stopping will make it more difficult for you to become sincere. Continuing will keep you on that pathway that will eventually lead to sincerity, inshallah.
Well, I think you made some really important points. And I think the power of intention, as you said, and that ayat that you mentioned from Surah Kahf does really make the hair on the back of your neck stand up because it hits home really hard. We're going to take our next break now. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV. This evening we're discussing a really important topic which is intention. Before the break and in the first two segments we've discussed the importance of intention, the power of intention, ostentation when it comes to intention and examples like that. But to carry on with this topic, Moulana, if you can give us some more examples of the power of intention.
You know, marriage is a very profound example in this regard because on average, if you live for 65 years, about 40 years of that 65 years you'll spend being married, right? Because people generally get married in their early to mid-20s and generally you would remain married until either one of the spouses passes on. Now, if your intention is right at the time of marriage and if you constantly renew your intention as to why you are married, then every second that you remain married, if your intention is that I'm fulfilling the sunnah of every Nabi, I am married to protect my chastity, to protect the chastity of my spouse, to procreate and increase the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to bring emotional stability, to bring happiness to my own heart and to the heart of my spouse, and the intentions can carry on, right? Then for every second of those 40 years that you remain married, even when you are having an argument, even when husband and wife are giving each other cold shoulder, even when you're sleeping on two edges of the same bed because you had a tiff, because your intention is right throughout that marriage, you are constantly in ibadah and you're constantly getting reward. When husband and wife are intimate, if the intention is right, the child that is the result of that intimacy, if your intention is that I want to bring a Muslim into the world, I will bring a person into the world who will take the name of Allah, as long as the name of Allah is being taken, Qiyamah will not take place. Every good deed that child does will reflect in your book of rewards. Then that child will have a child, and that child will have a child, and that will continue up to the end of time, up to the day of Qiyamah. And you'll have a share in that because your intention was there, your niyyah was there. That's why I said up front, it's so dynamic. We all married, right? Some of us may be happily married. But check your intention. Why am I married? Why did I get married? Why am I remaining married? What's the purpose of this marriage? Let me check my intention. Let me check my intention. And we must constantly make this dua that, Allah, grant me sincerity in all of my intentions. That's the power. These mundane things, non-Muslims are married, atheists are married, agnostics are married, even animals copulate. But what's the intention behind it is what distinguishes you as a Muslim. The second example I want to give highlights another point that the examples I've given so far, earlier I spoke about eating and sleeping and now marriage and how that differentiates you between others who are doing exactly the same thing and it becomes ibadah and for every second you get reward. But the mercy of Allah is such and the dynamism of intention is such that you can do one action and in that one action you can have multiple intentions and you will get rewarded separately for each intention. The very common example that the scholars give is of going to the masjid. So let's say it's Isha time. You hear the adhan. You reply to the adhan with the intention that it's sunnah to reply to the adhan. You make wudu at home because that is preferred. Then you travel to the masjid. Then your intention is right. I'm going to enter the masjid with the right foot, exit the left foot. I'm going to read the dua upon entering and exiting. I'm coming to the masjid to perform salah. I'm coming to the masjid to make dua. I'm coming to the masjid to make dhikr. I'm coming to the masjid to listen to a talk of deen with the intention of benefiting. I'm coming to the masjid if there's any dirt, I'll clean the masjid. I'm coming to the masjid a little early because waiting for salah is like performing salah. I'm coming to the masjid because an opportunity for me to greet Muslims. I'm coming to the masjid because an opportunity for me to inquire about the wellness and the health of other people. If someone is not there, I'll know he's not well. I'll follow up and I'll be able to see, what's the issue with him. I'm coming to the masjid so that I can spiritually connect with Allah. I'm coming to the masjid because Allah has made salah compulsory upon me. I'm coming to the masjid because Allah has encouraged and emphasized salah in congregational prayer. One trip to the masjid, one action, you can have multiple intentions. I've just given a few examples, and Allah will reward you separately and independently for each one of those intentions in that one action.
Sometimes I think we take it for granted, the amount of reward we can get, as you mentioned, in like mundane actions. And that's the important thing, the importance of intention. If our intention is right, if we make that intention and not look at it as something mundane or something insignificant, our entire day could be spent gaining rewards.
No, of course. And I mean, ultimately, Muhammad, this all ties down with your relationship with Allah. I mean, I said this initially, that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked the question that Mal Iman, what is Iman? And he said, Ikhlas. Your intention is your faith. When you do whatever you do, whenever you do it, lillah, only, totally, wholly, solely, and exclusively for the pleasure of Allah, then you are truly a Muslim. If we go back to the verse of the Quran where Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, Allah gives us a sense of purpose. Allah gives us the reason why we were created. You were created to worship me. Now, what is worship? Worship is not only your salah and your zakah and your hajj. Because if you were created for that, then how come you only perform namaz for maybe 1 hour in 24 hours a day? Why is it you go for hajj only once in a lifetime? You fast only 1 month in a year. You give zakat only on certain wealth, certain percentage, only once in a year. So how can we be created for that which takes up maybe 2, 3, 5% of our lifespan? Ibadah means that whatever you do it for the pleasure of Allah in accordance with the teachings of Allah. All right? So you do your business, your marriage, your parenting, your socializing, your eating, your drinking, whatever you do, every second of your life for the pleasure of Allah as per the teachings of Allah. That is ibadah and worship. Now that can only happen if you have intention. If you realize that you are truly a servant of Allah. You see, servant also is not the correct word. The word is slave. Because a servant has limited responsibilities. A servant has a clock in time, a clock out time. A servant has working days and off days. A slave doesn't have that. You're perpetually in the service of your master. And that's what we are. We are the slaves of Allah. Now, this word slave in the English language has a bit of a negative connotation, because if you talk about slaves, you start imagining African people being chained and shipped off to the Americas. But the Arabic word abd is very beautiful. That slavery is a beautiful slavery. It's the slavery where when you enslave yourself to Allah, that is when you truly liberate yourself from everything and everyone else. Because until and unless you don't enslave yourself to Allah, that whatever you do only for the pleasure of Allah as per the teachings of Allah. Until you don't enslave yourself to Allah, you will be a slave of something or someone. You'll either be a slave of your job, or you'll be a slave of the society or the trends or your spouse or your habits or your hobbies or whatever. But everything or something will dominate you and will lead you until and unless you enslave yourself to Allah. It is only when you enslave yourself to Allah that you truly become liberated. And you will enslave yourself to Allah when your intention is right. So that's why I will conclude by saying exactly what I said in the beginning. That this is not just a basic topic. This is not just one of those basic spiritual discussions. This is as contemporary as you can get. Today they talk about the power of intention, the power of intentionality, because even in material terms you can't succeed if you don't have intention. Intention is what informs motivation. Intention is what informs your sense of purpose. Intention is what informs your sense of discipline. When you have enslaved yourself for Allah, when you live only, solely, wholly, totally and exclusively for Allah, that is when you are sincere. That is when you have understood the purpose of your creation. And that is when you will be securing reward for every second that you breathe.
Moulana, Jazakallah so much for your time. I think it's really important that we discuss this topic. Sometimes, as you mentioned, sometimes we take these topics for granted. And to the viewers out there, really important topics put through. And as Moulana mentioned, that many scholars have mentioned, check your intention before, during, and especially after the deed has been done. From all of us in the team, we hope you enjoyed this evening's program. Until we meet again, fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.